We're still joined by the Mail's Andrew Pearce and by the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. Also joining us now live from Riga in Latvia is Alexey Kovalev. He's editor at the independent Russian news site Meduza, and he's now fled Russia. Good morning to you, Alexey. Let's come straight to you. Look, we know that the Kremlin has absolute control of state media in Russia. It's using its national television to peddle hourly, outrageous lies about what's happening in Ukraine. And many, many Russians believe those lies because they have no alternative source of so-called news. Is there any realistic prospect of bringing the truth to the Russian people about what's being done in their name?
Morning, and thank you for having me. And I'm afraid there's a much bigger problem than that. It's not just the lack of access to factual information, and we've seen that before. I'm afraid, and it's happening right now in Russia, in my family as well. Even when you confront people with actual facts, when you show people the images of carnage done to Ukrainian cities, they simply refuse to acknowledge that, or they will respond that it's the Ukrainians bombing themselves because that's what the state television is telling them. And it's not just providing people with facts. No, it doesn't really work like that because it's an easy way out of a moral quagmire. How do you justify your complicity in all this? If you're just one way to do this is that we have nothing to do with this. It's the Ukrainians doing this to themselves. It's not that this horrific war crime is done in our name by an army that's paid from our taxes. So it would be pretty hard to acknowledge something like this. So yeah, the propaganda is just offering people a easy way out of this.
But the Russian people are an advanced, civilized, intelligent population. What we can't understand here on this side of it is how they're able to believe what anybody looking at it, for example, the Ukrainians are shelling themselves, would at least suspect was nonsense. Why are they so willing to believe this rubbish?
Well, we'll probably have to ask Germans past 1945, or I don't know, people living under any brutal military dictatorship for years. They somehow must have come to terms with what's happening around them, or they would have joined the resistance en masse, which most people didn't. So there is no easy answer to this, and I frankly have no idea. I just see what's happening to people I know. And even within my own family, there is a problem like that with educated, realistic, pragmatic people who simply refuse to acknowledge that something that is really happening is happening. And I have no idea. Yeah.
It was the Nazi propagandist, wasn't it, Joseph Goebbels, he said two things about his line on propaganda. One was that if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one. And the other was that the more you lie, the more the lie becomes the truth. And that does seem to be what's happening in Russia, doesn't it? Huge lies, repeated endlessly, it becomes the truth.
Maybe there's also the effect of seeing what's happening to people who refuse to acknowledge those lies and accept them for the truth. Because right now as we speak, people are being tortured at police precincts. People who came out to protest against this war. It also does have an effect on you. Like your traitors who are spies for foreign governments, they're calling us. I myself had to flee Russia, leave my home behind and my family because they were calling us traitors day and night, and basically declaring an open season on every dissenter, every journalist who refuses to accept these lies and call it for what it is, war, and report on the war crimes committed by our army, done in our name. So there's...
Alexey, can you just... We know that this new law has been introduced, 15 years imprisonment for publishing what the Russian state calls false information. You've obviously fled because that is too big a risk to take. But just describe for us, for journalists left behind, what is the threshold for being arrested under that new law? I mean, what sort of information would lead you to being arrested now under the new legislation?
Well, First of all, there is, as of now, there is not a single news outlet that's not government controlled that is available to Russian citizens at the moment, because every single one of them has been blocked by the Russian censorship ministry. And for the rest, for people who are still staying behind in Russia, that would mean, well, first and foremost, calling the war a war, because you're not allowed to do that. And the censorship ministry was in no uncertain terms told us that this is kind of unauthorized information, that we will be blocked for calling the war a war, and we were, because we refused to accept that. And also by using basically using any sources other than the handouts from the Russian Defense Ministry, which claims, among other things, that they are not bombing any civilian centers, which is demonstrably not true. And whenever there is damage to the residential areas, it's because the Ukrainians, they call them Nazis, invariably, so it's like they're declaring the entire nation of 44 million people of different ethnicities and creeds and Nazis, that the Nazis are parking their artillery in densely populated residential areas to attract artillery fire from the Russian side and have their own people killed to accuse Russia of war crimes. So we have to repeat that on pain of being first our website blocked. It's not a problem for us anymore because we're already, or on pain of criminal liability for, yes, up to 15 years, because everything else that's not, government handouts is false information now.
Alexey, as Susanna says, you've had to get out of Russia. Many people running independent news outlets have had to get out of Russia. Is there any way that you can spread the truth back there, or are you completely shut down? We know your website's been shut down by the Russian authorities. Is there anything at all you can do? I mean, I was hearing conversations yesterday here in this country about shortwave radio, that may be ultimately the only way of getting messages of the truth into Russia.
Okay, so our website is not shut down. We're still operating. We're still online, and it's accessible from outside of Russia or inside Russia. And hopefully, we've been anticipating this for months, and we've been educating our audience about using VPNs and proxies to access our website. But the problem is that last April, when we were declared also a foreign agent, like many other independent media in this country, we lost all of our advertising revenue. So now we're depending on donations. But now, because the ruble is so much devalued by half practically, and Russians are being cut off from the world banking system, our source of donations from the Russian readers has all but dried up. So we are now pretty much dependent on donations from abroad. So yeah, that's our only lifeline, because Visa and MasterCard aren't working in Russia anymore.
Alexey, thank you for joining us this morning. Alexey Kovalev from the independent Russian news site Meduza. It's like 1984, isn't it?
Incredible. And the bitter irony, the collapse in with all these sanctions we've put in, which we want to achieve, could effectively shut that website down.
Because
how terrible is that? Because of the collapse of the ruble.
Not worth anything. Not allowed to call the war a war.
No.
Can only use sources handed out from the ministry.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians are bombing themselves.
Yeah.
Independent media are called foreign agents.
Yeah.
And if you report the truth in any of these scenarios, your independent site will be blocked or you face 15 years.
It's tyrannical.
Yeah.
And of course, Putin requires this to stay in power. But at some point, people are going to realise what's happening to an economy that's been wrecked by Putin because of the invasion. And also the bodies will begin returning, and they will return to families who will then get in touch with other families who know their sons and sometimes daughters have been killed in this war, and they'll see the official figures aren't true, and it'll begin to break. You can carry on the lie, and you keep repeating the lie, and you make it a big lie, you can go so far, but at some point people realise it is a lie.
And the Russian people might have been somewhat incredulous to see the media report, which we've all seen, of how the Ukrainians attacked their own nuclear
So what you're saying is, grim as it may be now, this is unsustainable for Putin.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable.
I believe he's already lost, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thousands, tens of thousands of Ukrainians will probably die in the process.
Yep.
And a considerable number of Russians.
Thank you both.
Andrew, thanks very much.
See you tomorrow.
Indeed.